Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government has consistently promoted the use of private finance to meet our rightly ambitious nature targets. It has done so based on an uncritical acceptance of the so-called funding gap identified by the Green Finance Institute, which, as we've heard today from Richard Leonard, is an organisation led by bankers. And as we've also heard today, that alleged gap of £20 billion has not been demonstrated by the Scottish Government and is now not recognised by Nature Scot, who have in fact publicly stated it is an overestimate. And the recent report by the independent forestry and land use consultant John Hollingdale raises significant doubts about the credibility of the Green Finance Institute itself. So what we should have heard from the Minister in her closing remarks was an acknowledgement on the record of the irresponsible way in which the Scottish Government accepted these now discredited figures. Instead, this Scottish Government has denied, deflected and doubled down. Presiding Officer, in March, when I put it to Minister Lorna Slater at a meeting of the Net Zero Committee that pursuing a private finance model at this scale would have a negative impact on communities in the long term, I was told, and I quote, "The need for private finance for nature restoration is unquestioned." Presiding Officer, I'm questioning it. I was also told, quote, "The finance gap is £20 billion. But today, the Minister has told us that figure is just one estimate. Presiding Officer, private financiers are not accountable to the people of Scotland. This Scottish Government is. So for a Government Minister to assert such figures as fact without question is highly irresponsible. And to blithely outsource the meeting of Scotland's environmental responsibilities based on unverified figures is nothing short of an abdication of responsibility. For a government to sell its mandate and our precious natural resources to the highest bidder is shamefully telling of the way this Scottish Government operates. Presiding Officer, if the Government continues with its private finance initiative, we face the prospect of Scotland's land and natural resources being used as a greenwash for big polluters. As we heard from Rhoda Grant, these financiers will require a return on their investment. So in return for funding nature restoration and carbon sequestration, carbon credits will be created and sold at a profit. And who will buy these credits? We've already seen that the principal beneficiaries of carbon credits are carbon polluters. Big emitters who have profited from environmentally damaging practices are being encouraged to pay to continue to pollute. So instead of Scotland's rich natural resources benefiting the people of Scotland and contributing to the global response to the climate emergency, they will be used to absolve the sins of the biggest polluters. Rather than selling indulgences to absolve polluters, the Scottish Government must fulfil its role to the people of Scotland to restore nature and reduce emissions, not simply to meet targets, but to secure a brighter future for us all. It's time for the Scottish Government to draw breath and consider all options to restore nature, not simply hand over the reins to private financiers. So I urge all members to support the Labour motion.